Hello, everyone. Okay. I want to speak about something perhaps untapped before. The voice of a person has a value both to their objective dimension and subjective dimension. When you speak, it's as if in two dimensions you have value. When you physically just move in one dimension, you have value. Now, the value of speech is that it is allowing an external motion to have a sort of subjective movement, a subjective influence. And so, pretty much, we human beings have to be aware of the objects around us, not only the objective reality around us for survival, but we have to also be aware of the subjective landscape we open our eyes in. Because language is an ancient game in the mind of a modern creature. I sometimes find myself going through these YouTube tunnels of watching various lectures, and I remember recently seeing a lecture where it included Terence McKenna, Rupert Sheldrake, and J.J. Abrams. Anyways, in it there was discussions on how human beings should, in some sense, interpret phenomena that is beyond their range of definition. You see, right now, let us say there is the normal world, things that are the familiar. Let me say it like this: there is a familiar world, and there is the unfamiliar. If you don't have the patience for the unfamiliar, you will discriminate. If you have the patience for the unfamiliar, you will learn, you will grow. Literally, dimensions will be added because you were not resisting the moment was authorized. Had a sort of internal authorization to continue. You see, it is about how many moments you disturb and how many moments have disturbed you. And then it becomes about how many moments you have served and how many moments have served you. For me, I noticed that every year of your life, every moment of your life, has its own style pretty much. And when you realize this, you stop playing with the past and the future like a toy you want to have. The future is a toy you want to have, the past is a toy you used to have. And the present moment is where we're playing the whole game. So I find that the mind is something that has unraveled. It has legit like a lotus opened. And at the end of this life, this mind will close. It will close to certain ways it is kept. Literally, the energetic expression changes. You know, we say that there is, of course, death, but if we define death as the change of the body, well, the body's just been changing since the beginning. You were a young, small child, and now you have grown, you know? The thing about humanity is that most human beings have an attitude of, at least let's say most healthy psychologies, they strive for some sort of independence. I have seen sheep among lions and lions among sheep. I have seen fools that were invited to the heavens. You see, it's very fascinating. Certain yogis knew there was something about human existence in ancient Vedic mythology that was fascinating. There was a rishi by the name of Rishi Vyasa, and the gods would visit this man, higher beings. Imagine superior extraterrestrials coming down to get courses from this yoga teacher. What if I told you life is a dance between the known and the unknown? And when the unconscious moves your consciousness, that is when the world's moving you. You're being the soul of the world. Your soul is being the world. And there are certain moments where your soul is being a certain self in the world. What we notice primarily when there are altered states of consciousness, any person, of course, whenever a person eats, any food you eat is altering the chemistry of the body, right? And even in accordance to movement, in certain ancient cultures, their approach towards the transcendental was through dance, through ecstatic trance dance, whether it was through evoked through music or it was evoked through personal ambition. You know, so other cultures they in some sense had an allegiance with the plant kingdom. And you see different cultures have different experiences. The whole point is that this is what I find is required. Most people need a mirror throughout the day to make sure they see themselves, right? And sometimes when you enter the social system, you tend to be defined by the social system. And so Mr. Within is saying, as long as you're getting defined by your world, you will never see something new. You will be behind. I find that behind your eyes, you can exist various bodies. In front of your eyes, it is one body. This means the singular has access to the multidimensional, or the multidimensional is projecting the singular. And the thing about life is the more smaller you are, the more you are a smaller part of it, the more the rest of it is unknown. Just like how we created borders, we are creating the borders of our ability and intelligence. I find that what is required now is no longer followers. The world doesn't need people to act like clones of one set of ideology. That is not what the world needs. The world doesn't need a truth. The world needs a new design. It needs to realize that consciousness is an evolutionary opportunity provided after 4 billion years, and so its efficient use is what must be rewarded. Our civilization should be based around an encouragement of the citizen towards its greatest ability. Its greatest ability doesn't mean it has to be good or bad. You see, good and bad, it is a container. Now, the action on its own, it doesn't matter what kind of, if you are pouring apple juice or orange juice, it doesn't matter what you did. It matters the implication, how what you did was an influence to matter. And so the title is a suggestion that at some point in our evolution, human progress began having nothing to do with stuff. We are theatrical ideal worshippers because we feel there is nothing beyond our individualism, because we have not dared ask questions that our ancestors forbid us of asking. When one looks at language up close, what it is the ascribing of symbology on phenomena, right? So I'll give you an example. Imagine a person wants to be certain of where a direction of somewhere is that they feel they know the direction. Then they ask someone for directions, and that person very honestly, to the best of ability, gives them directions. Okay? Then the person who asks for the directions suddenly notices that the directions the other person is giving is wrong, but they've shared enough for the person to know the accuracy of the direction, right? So what I'm saying is the person has a thought, and the people act upon thoughts, and thoughts, believe it or not, arrive with the spontaneously. Either they're being evoked subconsciously or they're being evoked consciously. That means stress and depression is a sign of an ideological box, being trapped in a box. There's been moments where I had to renounce glory. I had to renounce greatness. Let me tell you why. I had to renounce my ultimate desire. My ultimate desire began becoming something so collective that it's as if God gave you one wish, what would that wish be? And for me, the wish was to witness the ultimate evolution of existence. It was as if there was this yearning to see where this game of matter that my eyes have opened in is going, you know? And what it is that we are all just simply moments of being that awake through a sort of genetical lens. And as we are witnessing the world around us, there is the free will to apply and identify ourselves with our reality. So let me tell you, the most important thing that is the issue with our current educational systems is that they don't empower the mind of the individual. You know, the educational system does empower the body of the individual, but it does not empower the mind of the individual, because the mind of the individual is only empowered when it becomes expression oriented, not reception oriented. You see, what was strange for me was the fact that I had asked the question. What became strange for me was the fact that my attention had wandered that far. And it was like you follow the mystery of your intuition, and as you pull those strings, you begin to see the hands of God in your eyes. You begin to see how, in some sense, the invisible reality sculpts the visible. How there requires to be space for a performance to occur, and so there required to be space for existential performance to occur. But this existential performance has reached a certain point where its performance has become experiential, storified, put into a narrative, and it's as if you're just born as a moment of sight, and they take this moment of sight and they throw it in the cage of whatever ideology is stronger than the mind of the child. And what happens is that, believe it or not, it's very rare to be who you are in a world where your mind is learning from what is outside of itself. The young child will not know who it is because it is at first using the copy-paste mentality. You're trying to follow whatever archetype is accessible. You know, it is kind of like the devotion of the son to the father. And we find this in Christianity, that the archetype accessible to Christ, the most ultimate, was the father. Was the decision maker of the cosmos, in some sense, where he was an extension of. So what it was is that most religions are a symptom of the psychological development of certain human beings in being able to personalize the unknown. The mystery of their universe was in such a state where they were blessed because the unknown spoke to them. That is why. That is why. That is the only reason. Because let me tell you what the unknown is. The unknown is not measurable. You cannot measure it. You cannot put the whole universe in a bag of thought. And this is why some people feel the intellect may lead, it doesn't normally, but may lead to the suffocation of the creativity. Because it becomes fragments. It becomes like behind your eyes, you're a moment. Imagine just like there's no body, there's no individual. You're just the space in a room, and your viewpoint can be accessible from any point in that space. It's as if before our brains get connected to a digital cloud, it's as if we have to look at the clouds and wonder if our eyes are behind the sky's end. Like, how can I tell you? I found this very fascinating. That what a person doesn't understand, he does not dare stand under. And this is why in life there is life will not give you time to be something that you are not. So I had to sit down and in some sense negotiate with the mind of the cosmos in regards to how my attention was more than its free will. Because it's kind of like, imagine they've given you like poker hands, and so this lifetime is a certain hand you're given. And so it's as if the cosmos is asking you, do you want to go all in with this hand? Okay? And most people are looking at their hand, and in today's culture and society are saying, no, I want to play it safe. I'm going to go hide in my little kingdom so the big world doesn't find me. And that is the shame of the world. That we are failing because we are forgetting. And we are forgetting because the attention is moving away from the traditional value. Therefore, a new world must emerge. Not a new world order or a new world chaos. Chaos was here before order. What that means is, it's kind of hilarious, guys, I will say it. Any person on this planet who is engaged with some sort of esoteric behavior or society or tradition, let me tell you, all those people who tried to see God on earth only saw earth. What I mean by that is that you're looking for an invisible, mysterious power behind a door you cannot see, and so because you want to communicate with it, you are taking the submissive mode. And therefore what it means is that the next idea that comes into your mind you think is the voice of the higher power, and then you're done. You're trapped into an ego. And so this is where I say, Mr. Within is saying, do not think you may be in the best, multi-billionaire or something, in the best house. You know, but you cannot, ideology you must fight. We are all in the war of ideology. Ideas come and go. And so the greatest Zen masters, they declared external peace and therefore endlessly being victorious in the internal war. When you stop hurting the world, you first get into a state where the world is like, all right, this person's chill. And then, how can I tell you, when your ego understands its existence is to serve the ultimate evolution of thought, which is the collective vision? Here's a secret. The only way to live for life is to live for life. Live for the living world while you're alive. Success has to do with direction. Direction has to do with vision. Vision has to do with whatever you're aware of now, being whatever it is. I find we are in an era where the cosmos and, as the ancients would say, the divine will rewards the creative. We just look at our economical systems. It says creative technologies have become more. It's like creative ideas in civilization are like enlightened beings. Imagine there was a solution to world peace. You don't fear the unknown, and you don't desire the unknown, and then you remain silent and still, more humble than your first conscious moment as a child on this earth. And as you stand, like in a battlefield of thoughts, thoughtless, something strange happens. You walk in hell, but every step is in heaven. As a cloud moves through an empty valley, the mystery of consciousness remains unknown. If our sight was a door, it means it is between two worlds. A wall is a world divider, and the only intention for division is preservation. It's like somebody who's not ready to change. It's like, I'll give you an example. You see it. I saw this YouTube video. It's like this kid was playing so much video games that his parents come and take his like console, and then the kid just holds on to his video games as if like it's the apocalypse and he wants to hold on to what he desires. And so that's a person who is not ready to change with the world. They are still trying to master their inner dimensions. But you know, after some point, the mastery of your inner dimensions remains limited as long as you externalize it. So that means I often wonder, if I was born in a totally different way, would I give these talks? And I realized that I would eventually have an urge to communicate, because that is the nature of the inner reality. Its purpose is to be external. And the purpose of external reality is to be internalized. And through these two generations, infinite propellers on for the plane of consciousness's attention, the reality, there's a center point. The center point is the truth. What that means is illusion is orbiting around truth. They're in the same moment. You can say that a great story can be found if all the species of the world, other than human beings, united to destroy humanity, who they thought wreaked chaos. Eventually, we'd suddenly see, for example, this is, I'm playfully animating a story here. Imagine the cats and the dogs, like those two species came to defend mankind when all the other species was going against it, right? And what I'm trying to say is eventually you will see they will not destroy the only hope they have to the higher dimensions. That means it's like when human beings don't respect each other, it doesn't matter if Christ or an extraterrestrial comes back. It's as if like it would be a situation where we would not even care. We would not respect it. The same argument that follows if Christ came back like an average person, would people notice him? That means we have in some sense accepted the total denial of the truth of the other. That means people are living in a world they don't trust internally. And that's an issue that leads to inefficiency. And this inefficiency is at an opportunity cost, because every moment of your failure could be a moment of success. Every moment where you are weak is a moment of strength. Every moment where, in some sense, the temporal is witnessed, you know, the eternal roar can be heard as well. And you will find the eternal roar of your true self. It's literally a moment where you cannot act anymore. You just relax. You know, life has, the more complex you make life, the less you will be attentive to your emotions. And if you're not attentive to your emotions, you miss out on a lot of what happens in reality. You know, it's like that saying, a one man's trash is another man's treasure, one man's treasure is another man's trash. Like, you know, whichever way you like to see it. It eventually becomes the experiential variety. It becomes the variety, the more that engages you, you know. In ancient Greece, evidently there was an emperor who started having in his mind like arguments with Poseidon. And it's like, I think maybe one day it just rained too long, and he's like, Poseidon, you messing with me, bro? The god of water wants to challenge this emperor's ego. This emperor's ego will show the god of water. And so what happens is this emperor commands his army to take swords and his greatest warriors to go and attack the water, right? And in that moment, you're just seeing like a bunch of soldiers just hitting like the waves of an ocean with swords, trying to kind of like attack Poseidon. And I'm pretty sure one of the soldiers back in the day was like, okay, guys, how long we gotta just hit water? Like, what's up? It's strange, but when a person is gentle, content, and liberated, they find a strange freedom to attempt what has not been attempted before. It is a sort of perfection or characteristic of the soul of that individual. When I say soul of that individual, how an attributeless attention projects an objective display of what it is, you know? Whatever way you like to call it. But to be honest, in ancient texts said it, in modern texts will eventually conclude it, that it's like the awareness the seer of sight, the one who's aware that they are seeing something, cannot be seen because it is not of an individual texture. It's more part of the non-dual fabric of creation. There's many moments, just like how there's many ways you can stand and sit down, there's many altered states of mind where the values of reality shift in accordance to how you hold, in some sense, your universal your principal philosophical universal axiom. So what I mean by that is, that's another way of saying, like, if your belief, your fundamental beliefs, if they were a weapon you were holding in your hand, that's how the person finds himself in the world. It's as if there is energy to be expressed, but now this energy has crystallized into a greater evolutionary sense of control. The reason we became civilized is because the individual, the subjective realm, began commanding peace. You know, many people in spiritual traditions, they declare war on the ego, yet they don't realize it was the ego that pulled man out of the food chain. Our egos are as divine as the moment is. How do we respond to the world that we're alive once in? What is the solution to a creature that wakes up and sleeps, constantly comes into view of design and framework and phenomena and responsibility and motivation, inspiration and vision, and suddenly goes out of view? It's like, what do we do with the universe found in light and darkness? Well, all our knowledge comes from the observable universe, which in some sense means that matter is only matter if there's something there to see matter. If there's nothing to see matter, like in deep sleep, do you have problems? Like, regardless of how much someone is scared of the outcome of some action, they in some sense will find that when they sleep, in deep sleep, it's as if they were disconnected from the world for a moment. That disconnect is liberating, but it doesn't mean it's something to be. You see, the nature of the mind is based on how much you desire something. It means how quick your hand takes the cake from the plate. You know, like, imagine there's one slice of pizza, and there's literally 20 people looking at this, right? And look at the strategy. Look at the strategy of people taking the pizza. Imagine there's one box, one slice of pizza, okay? And 20 people want to take it. And everybody, most people have their hands up about to grab the pizza, but suddenly you see somebody pulls the box. And in pulling the box, he pulls the reality where the conclusion was being made in. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of like you observe and then you live. Observe and live. That's pretty much it. And it's okay to confront the unknown. It's okay for the world not to have meaning all the time in a perfect way. It's impossible. There's so many imperfections in existential design that some of them we just have to laugh about. It's as if, like, beats me why our ancestors had to run away from, say, like tigers and stuff. But the design was there and it occurred, and we are now at a point where new intentions can arrive. The voice of matter must be heard by the ears of civilization evolving, the care for what is to come. Because I'm just thinking, I'm telling you, like, imagine Albert Einstein. The human psychology is that we're social animals, okay? By nature, it's like whether we like it or not. you know That's why, regardless of how much you hate society, you still are in society. This is the poetic thing about the rebels. The rebel was rebelling in society. Do you see? It's as if he still saw himself part of that world. He just wanted to see a different way of it working. And it's so important to serve your mind, and then your mind teaches you how to command it, pretty much. When I say your mind teaches you, your observance literally leads to certain conclusions, because the whole point of trust is, without trust you cannot accumulate. That means if you don't trust that you exist in a moment, you will not remember that moment. Any moment where you emotionally did not trust, imagine it's blank. It didn't enter your long-term memory. The moment enters your long-term memory when there's vision, inspiration, motivation, and at certain intensities. It's so fascinating. You can get to certain levels of whether through communication or just emotions or things in life happening, where you will find yourself in a state where your emotions have reached their chaos. You have reached the edge of their limits, and your thoughts are moving so fast. That means you're witnessing thoughts move so fast that it's as if they have reached the edge of the limit, and you are left in the first position of life, the breathing moment. And that is a sacred temple. It's an inner temple. If you find the grace of how consciousness has entered the temple of matter, how every moment you should be slow hand clapping for how fascinating this human design is in this history of ours. Value has to do with sight, and sight has to do with attention, and therefore it is our attention that is creating our values. And they've said it, you control someone's attention, you control their reality. Like, that's the whole point of hunting. That's how hunter and gathering societies work. They kind of had bait, right? They would, and the bait would take the attention of the person away from their motivations of the day or of the moment. There are cultures that teach the children of that part of the world that you must honor the ancient, but you must not act like the ancient, because if you do, you are dishonoring them. Anytime you have a chance for doing something new and you do something that is repetitive, you have in some sense denied your mind access. And so the point is, people should stop getting, they should get rid of the narrative filter. You see, it's like you need to be a character in a story, of course, when you go to work, because you need to be able to communicate as an individual point of consciousness, right? But on some level, when the moments where you're alone, or think of a moment where after a long day, you're just under the shower and you're just contemplating the whole day. So in that moment, there is behind your eyes, the clouds are, the sky is less clouded. Ludwig Wittgenstein says the limits of my language is the limits of my world. And what knowledge seems, sorry about that, what knowledge seems to be is, in some sense, learning different organizations of language, how language and symbology is organized, which makes the dictionary an incredibly ingenious book for especially young kids to read, because the dictionary is giving them ideas of what is out there in the world, you know. The emergence of new vision, what it means is literally the solution that all of us are waiting for, the savior that all of us are waiting for, is that 8 billion beings on this planet, their attention is leading to the creation of phenomena. And so what it means to the value of phenomena and their free will deciding what to do with that phenomena. So the salvation of the world is in not the hands of 8 billion people, but is in how the minds of 8 billion people choose to see the world and its values. And what it means is we have to start developing global values. We got to treat the whole civilization as the brain of the universal sector. That's the way that a civilization jumps into a very quickly into a galactic mode. And when I say quickly, that means if we choose to begin wondering about the inner dimensions of man, it means we want to explore inner skies. And for inner skies, you require inner pilots, which means human beings have to start giving themselves levels of freedom that allow at least how the world is seen to change. Think of it this way: you are in a part of the world, and that part of the world is by nature's laws just changing naturally, right? But how you are in that moment has to do also with how you interpret that moment. And so if you interpret, if you have a belief on the moment, that literally means you have held an idea in front of your face and you are not willing to let go of it. And so everything that's passing by, you're seeing through the lens of that belief. Therefore, you must treat thought as, in some sense, clouds. Or Chung Tzu tells us to treat them like leaves on a tree. As the seasons pass, as the cyclical nature of phenomena progresses, there just arrives a sort of realization, okay, you can't really hold on to much. This is why you live for the moment. Now, when you go to live for the moment, it has to do with the value of self in accordance to where the self is. It's like when you are alone, you realize it's like there is no external worry, there's no external stress. But our ancestors, they were in the forest, and it's like even though the dude was alone, like a tiger could come out of nowhere. So there had to be a totally different freedom. So it's like we did achieve internal levels of freedom throughout our evolution. And I feel tribalism had to do more with protection than just communication. It was communication was like the another advantage of tribalism that arrived. I feel it was simply protective oriented, you know. As once as as one as one studies any phenomena, they're studying the change of phenomena, then they are studying the positioning of that change or result or outcome into a sort of analysis of the world they have. And the analysis of the world means that how a person sees the world is that they have certain experiences, and these experiences give them suggestions. It's as if the sensory data is being interpreted in two ways, as true or untrue. And the reason we're asking the question true or untrue is because there is a question to ask. Our intelligence is there. It's as if we think a question is something man-made. In actuality, no, a question is a state of mind. When you treat things as a state of mind, it's not really linguistic, it's experiential and presence oriented. And the presence of the human being works rhythmically. So what that means is we may think, like, imagine there's the UN, and suddenly this really young child, like 11 years old, walks into the UN and starts giving its own speech with its own microphone, and the people in the UN all are quiet listening to this kid, and they're like, whoa, is nobody taking care of this kid? And imagine nobody decided to interrupt this kid as this 11-year-old kid is giving a speech to the UN, and the 11-year-old kid in his speech begins saying, for example, how he feels people should play more and have fun, and makes this, imagine, adorable kind of speech about fun and happiness and love and all this. And the people in the UN kind of like, they fix their ties and they're like, all right, let's get this kid out of here. And so that little kid, in that moment, brought forth a thought out of the current paradigm of the thinkers in that collective moment. So what it is we're pretty much human beings, and we're human beings that are looking for ideas that are most efficient. And when we find an efficient idea and we act upon it, we get efficient results. The simplest way to know that what you're doing is inefficient, if the result of it is it's as if there isn't an internal hope for the phenomena. Sometimes it's like you gotta be willing to change with the world, or you will be pushed by the world away. I find that to be very true. I find that we got to look at it from a very general aerial view, generalized view, and let me tell you why. Because in order to create a system that is efficient for 8 billion people, it must be worth engaging for 8 billion people. And so I've thought about, okay, so what would the story of the future look like if there was one? And I would see that if there was a story of the future that didn't have to be defined by the past, it means it could be a story that structures the dimensional values in any way. So I'm saying that we are civilization in our history currently is like this long story being written on this long piece of paper. What Mr. Within is saying, imagine you take the piece of paper away and you find a new piece of paper. And so you want to right now restorify, restructure civilization into value. Right? So what would be valuable in civilization? And so the thing is that because it's hilarious, it's like the systems of our governance are based on past values, but they have access to modern technology, which in some sense means that due to the globalization of data and just simply knowledge, skill has become the position of power. In my experience, I went through this was during, like, I say, from a period of 2011 to 2013, like late 2013. I went through a very strange phase, and actually not just then, it just evolved that what was occurring in my subconscious, and was that I had in some sense found a way to eradicate the concept of the subconscious for myself. I had managed to not cut the veil of thought, but to eradicate its conceptual position somehow. And because I had that sort of attitude, I suddenly had an open view of the unknown. So it was a moment where rather than me being this known person communicating to an unknown entity, I became the known phenomena. My consciousness was present in the known phenomena, and my consciousness became present in the unknown phenomena. And there was a rhythmic oscillation between the consciousness, kind of like a basketball, going between the reality of the surface of your hand, you know, the palm of your hand, and the reality of the concrete underneath. It is as if touching two worlds at this while being between both. Eventually, my observation, and I think this is what everybody concludes from an experiment, is that okay, the experiment showed a certain result, but there is so much more. And if there is a chance that reality is collective, it means knowledge cannot make individual claim. That means the branches of trees are trying to act like the trunk of the tree. And guys, I'm telling you, what we consider to be extraterrestrial even has nothing to do with what the extraterrestrial is. It has to do with our considerations. What that means is whenever you get upset at someone, speech is a mutation of subjective reality, or maybe a better word is a transformation of objective reality. Yeah. We are not just consuming food, we're consuming the whole moment into a data processing kind of pattern. And so there's much to be explored. Exploration is one of those pillars of civilization that must be kept protected. And the pillars of civilization is a concept that's inspired out of my own personal writings, where I say that there are these giant pillars in civilization where every generation is putting their own layer on this pillar, and these are the stories of protecting certain values that are keeping the civilization. Okay, it's as if it's totally fine to mess around in the civilization and not care for it, but there are certain values that must be protected. It doesn't matter how much your characteristic is good or bad, you're doing this for the sake of human continuity. Because it's any person who is going against their world, let me tell you, you have got something wrong. It's an opportunity. It is not a prison. This world is not a cage. It is an opportunity for a unique sort of freedom, a unique ability to contribute to the complexity of how our thoughts are building the world around us, and how every person must contribute. They must join. I find that stories tend to arrive from man's mind, but the religious mindset considers there are stories that arrive from the mind of, let's say, universal intelligence. So what that means is it about finding the right story or watching beyond belief? People think they come into this world empty-handed. Every person harbors within them secret viewpoints that once actualized become skill. Once you act upon your inner visions and you actualize them, the world suddenly gets a totally different behavior with itself. Anyways, guys, I hope this was helpful. And the greatest definition of progress is clarity. And the greatest definition of clarity is efficient vision. Just write these two words on a piece of paper and don't do anything. Just look at them every now and then and wonder what is the efficient vision of the moment. That means, okay, I know it's easier to be a hedonist than to be a humanist, you know. But the value of life lies in its evolution, lies in its continuity. Our biological evolution worships continuity, existential continuity. Our subjective evolution worships, in some sense, the infinite void. It's like the person came to value, to put a unit, to create a unit of measurement, but when he came to measure the thing, the measurement never ended. It was something where the person, like, imagine there was a sort of, what do you call those things? Like construction tape that measures, you know, I forget the term, sorry. But, but I'm just saying, like, it's immeasurable. It's not something where you can capture the waterfall in a cup. You can't do that. You capture only a certain aspect of it. So pretty much I often have this relationship where in the moment I just, whatever I think is happening, I take that as one version of the truth. And then I watch and I don't have an ego about the data. Because it's so hard, it's so unnecessary to have an ego about everything. The ego can manifest anytime. Anytime you want something not to change, the ego's there. Anytime you want something even to change too much, the ego is there. So eventually you're left into finding out about your nature. And Sri Ramana Maharshi says meditation is your true nature. He says the greatest service that one can render one's own enlightenment is the greatest service they can render the world, something like that. In ancient yogic traditions, the ego was kind of referred to that stick you use to fix the coals in the fire, the burning coals in the fire, but eventually you throw that stick into the fire too. So the ego's purpose is to fulfill its journey in manifestation. You know, the ego will be there till as long as the body is there. So as long as the body is there, there is the ego, so you can't really get rid of the ego. But then the question comes, why did we want to get rid of the ego? And we see because there was a reasoning outside of the design of that system, the design of that idea. That means it's like a person can read words in the dictionary, or just you can read a book and eventually you're seeing a movie. You know, this is I think, what happens for people who read fast. They're not actually reading, they're trying to see how the author is conceptually painting the moment. I find that to be a luxury of listening, you know. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I feel the voice of the moment gracefully returns to the silence.